Hey, y'all, and welcome back to Above the Tree Line Season 2, where we answer your questions about faith, Christianity, and culture. Today, we have a special guest, his first time on the show, and a relatively new addition to the ACF staff family, and that is Mr. Colby Huth.
Yeah.
And you are our men's pastor.
Yeah.
I know I'm telling you this like, yes, are
Yeah.
you our men's pastor?
I just found out right now.
You are our men's pastor.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the role?
It's been 6 months. It's been a lot coming in, like drinking through a fire hydrant, but
Yeah.
it's been good.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for so long because I know that you're very like data driven. Like
Yes.
I know you love statistics and research studies,
Yeah.
and you are like neck deep in some studies right now, and
Yes.
they seem very, very relevant to our church. So I want to talk about them.
Yeah, I keep sharing stuff on Slack and seeing if anyone will like them, and I think I get minimal responses.
What drives this in you? Where's this fascination for church statistics and studies come from?
I mean, I think I just naturally love data, and I feel like it proves a point. And so if you can prove a point by backing it up with data, I'm like, well, it's got to be good then, right? Because there's data behind it. And so I like coming to a conversation with the data to back it up too.
It also helps you win arguments.
I wasn't going to say that.
If you're in one. So a lot of the statistics that we have are from Barna. Trust that organization, love their studies,
Yes.
and a lot of them are
Great
pertaining
stuff.
to the church. And some of the statistics that you sent me
Yeah.
were about within the church. Well, there was a lot of things in here, but the intergenerational relationships. So primarily in the church right now, we've got boomers, we've got Gen X, we've got millennials, and then we've got Gen Z.
Yes.
And there is this kind of resurgence of like the church attendance is increasing surprisingly amongst millennials and Gen Z, which I never thought.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be the
it's
case.
almost unbelievable because I think a lot of what we see in the media and stuff like that is that Gen Z millennials are lazy and, like unattentive, not interested in things like that. And the data says otherwise. That, these generations are actually leading the charge now on reading their Bible. They're leading their charge on coming to church and wanting to be involved. So it's a really cool shift that's happened here recently.
It is cool. But I also will notice, you and I were talking about this before we started recording, there is some distrust amongst the generations.
Yes.
And I'm even one of those people. Like, I'm guilty of being like, oh, well, they're probably a boomer, or, oh, Gen Z. And it's like, I trust my generation, and I know, like, my parents are like that. Like, they trust the boomers. These have long been the leaders of the church. Gen X has always been kind of like aloof. So what do we think has brought about this distrust between the generations?
Well, I think it started a bit back. I'm a millennial, and growing up as a millennial, you heard a lot about how millennials were lazy or had these wild passions or things like that. And so when millennials got into the workforce, that was kind of how they were typified. And then I think when we hit COVID, things just escalated. We had the separation and everyone.
Well, it was division everywhere. Division over everything. Politics,
Absolutely.
masks, vaccinations.
So if there was any crack where division could happen, it was going in there. And so I think that the generations saw more of that. Like, it was already present, and it was accelerated because of COVID. And so I think that there is this natural distrust that has happened. And I think people are naturally drawn to agreeing and feeling drawn to people that are similar to them. So it makes sense that generations would be drawn to their same generation, but there has been a distancing across the generations. And I think the data proves that too.
And so historically, there had been intergenerational discipleship. That was a very big piece of the church. You would have one person pouring into another younger person because they've already walked that path. And it feels like we're seeing less and less of that. And I'm trying to figure out why we don't have this intergenerational mentorship. The statistics that you sent me were that the older churchgoers are largely unengaged in mentorship, but the people who were engaged in a mentorship type relationship reported happier marriages, better relationships with their children, and so forth. So if there's research that says that these intergenerational mentorship type relationships are good for us, why are we not investing in them?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of it goes back to that distrust. I think that we have seen as a society this distrust of others. And I think with the generations kind of being at a focal point, there are these almost like caricatures of each other. that we paint. And so when we get into that, it's hard to go away from that. You've painted a picture, you view people in a certain way. You maybe even have experience potentially in church or elsewhere with these generations. You're like, well, I know what to expect because I've experienced it before. I've heard about it. And so people are nervous to bridge the gap and make those connections for fear of being hurt or feeling like people are going to, confirm their suspicions about someone else. And so it is going to take bridging that gap and trusting people when it feels like you can't. And I think that's what, the American church needs to do today. And I think it's going to taking a little bit of a risk on some people to find out that the benefit is there. And I think what you were talking about seeing people, better families, better relationships with their spouse, their children, with friends, it's all there. And it's just taking that leap, taking that jump to actually care, make the connection, and see the fruit that comes from it.
It does seem like in these statistics that you gave me, Gen Z is the highest percentage of all the generations that is actually being mentored.
Yes.
Followed by millennials, followed by Gen X, followed by boomers. But at boomers, the stage in life that they're at, is it still beneficial for them to have some kind of mentor relationship? Or, I don't I don't know. I want to, because some of them are getting up there in age. Like, is there really more that they can learn from somebody ahead of them?
Yeah, I think the answer is absolutely. Okay. I think that, we see in scripture, and I think we know as Christians, like, you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to get to a spot where you're like, I figured it all out. I'm the perfect Christian. I know everything I need to know. Now I can just bestow it upon others. I think we're always in a constant pursuit of learning more, diving deeper in our faith. And if that is true, then there are people that can pour into your life.
Right.
And so I think it doesn't matter your age. And honestly, I think a lot of times people also seek out mentors that are older than them.
It doesn't have to be age difference. It doesn't have to be. But maybe somebody more spiritually mature.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think the maturity is a big piece of it. And so I think age is just a number. And I think the maturity is a bigger piece of it. Someone that you can glean things from, that has things that can challenge you, push you, and allow you to dive deeper into your faith. And I think if you can identify that in your life, you're in need of a mentor.
I agree. Back at ACF many years ago, before COVID, we had our ACF women were focusing on these mentorship relationships. And they were like, we constantly want you pouring out to someone else. And we constantly want someone else pouring into you. And if we're all doing this, our cups are remaining filled.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was extremely beneficial. Sometimes I think about when I was younger, I'm not necessarily saying that I feel this way now, but I was like, what can my parents teach me? Like, they didn't grow up when I grew up. Like, they grew up in a different time period, different relationships, different technology. But at the same time, I would hate for my kids and high school students now to be like, what can I learn from her? She grew up in a different time period. Because I'm like, humans are still the same. Like, we're the same. It's just the conditions around us has changed.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to lend credibility to people in other generations. And I don't know if I've always been great at doing that, but
there's even things with learning from others' mistakes too. You know, I think a lot of times we seek out mentorship and well, this person knows a lot, but they know a lot because they've gone through life, and the circumstances might be different, life might be different, society might be different, but there's things that they've learned through life lessons and stuff like that. And so being able to learn from those things and say, hey, sure, circumstances might be different now, but I can learn from those things and not make the same mistakes, or glean something that I can take with my faith too.
Okay, so I want to talk about some of these stats regarding men.
Okay.
Because you are a men's pastor.
Yeah.
And I might have some stereotypes in this, but I constantly see women. Like, I have a mentor, and she recently moved to Florida, so now we have to meet once a week via Zoom. And we meet, and she knows everything about my life. She knows what's going on in my marriage, like the stuff I would never talk about. She knows all of it. And it's so beneficial to have that time with her each week. And sometimes, I just need a good slap in the face, being like, okay, absolutely. Snap out of it, Lauren. But I kind of think, is it typical? I feel like women are more likely to be in that kind of relationship than men. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah. But I think it's a perpetuated stereotype. I think that a lot of times it's easier for women to fall into those roles because we view them in that way. And a lot of times for men, it's not so much. You know, I think that we would say, well, sure, yeah, like guys having friends is important, but we don't have the intentionality of doing it. And I think that the way guys make friends is different. And so there's not a lot of stuff out there that is really encouraging guys to make friends in that capacity. And I think it's really leading to an epidemic of male loneliness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking here. One of the reports has the connection between having a confidant and a man's well-being. And having a confidant, their marriage is better, their relationship with their children is better, their friendships are better. And then the other stat is the connection between intergenerational friendships. Yeah. And the higher percentage of people that have those relationships, those three categories are better: marriage, children, friendships. Yeah. And this epidemic of loneliness, which I think we've seen kind of not skyrocket, but I think we've seen increase since COVID.
For sure.
Why do you think men are so affected by that?
I think it's just because it's kind of a silent thing. You know, I think that, we're not seeing headlines all the time about male loneliness. It's not something that is, selling on the headlines. And so it's kind of happening in the background. People aren't addressing it. And so I think it's kind of this silent killer that is happening. And so because it's not getting that attention, it's not getting the resources it needs. And so people aren't out talking about like, hey, here's how to, affect your male loneliness. Here's how to make friends. Here's how to do these things. And so, guys they don't have the resources available to be able to figure out how to do that. And I think that that's a great place for the church to step in and say, here, we'll create spaces where that is possible, and we'll encourage it, because even the data says everything in your life will improve because of it. Your relationship with your spouse, your friends, your family. And I think, your own life, Lauren, is a testament to that you have someone that you can connect with that helps you in that. It's the same thing for men too. And I think that access to that is limited.
I just cannot imagine my husband having the type of intimate conversations that I have. Like, I don't even know if dudes talk about the same stuff that we talk about. But, it's even funny, like if we go over to like a friend's house, like, and we have like, we are hanging out with a couple and the guys go outside and the girls are staying inside. The differences in the things that we talk about, like Matt and I will get back together at the end of the night and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like, she said this and this and this, and they're just primarily talking about like fishing or sports and I'm like, what is it? Like, why aren't we going deeper?
Yeah. And I think that's a good question, because I think sometimes that small talk is good because it creates the commonality and the friendship there, bonding over things that are similar. But there is a need to go deeper. And I think that being able to open up and share what life is like, struggles that you're going through, things like that are good for us, especially because for me, having young kids, I need people around me that are like, you're not crazy, like it's like that being a parent. It's like that having a spouse. Like, life is like this, it's okay. And I think having that reassurance is important. And sometimes if we stick to the small talk, if we stick to the general conversations, we don't get that depth. And so for guys, I think my encouragement is be willing to be vulnerable and be willing to receive someone else being vulnerable. And I think the depth that can come from that is really life-changing. And I think it's worth taking the risk to feel like you're breaking down those walls in an attempt to create something a little bit deeper.
Is being vulnerable, can that be seen as a weakness?
I think typically as a society, we don't want guys to seem vulnerable because it does seem like a weakness. But I really don't think so, because I think that it allows you to access a depth that is typically unheard of, and you can talk about things that you feel like you shouldn't talk about, or you can't, or you don't have someone that can help you walk through things. And so I think being vulnerable with the right person is important. I don't think we need to be going out, airing everything to everyone we meet, but at the same time, finding someone that you can trust, that is willing to hear those things, allow you to voice them, and then help you get through that. And also hold you accountable in those things too, and hold you to a standard that is holy, I think is important.
Do you think these types of like confidant relationships, is it more common amongst Christ followers than it is in like non-believers?
It for sure is, yeah. Yeah, and it is, because I think that historically we see the church as a resource for that. When people come to church, even if they're seeking it out for the first time and stuff like that, they're looking for a way to better themselves. And I think that sure, most people will come on Sunday, you'll hear a sermon, you'll worship, you'll go home and you feel better because of it. But the people that go deeper, get involved in a small group, find a mentor, find that relationship, find that there is so much fruit there. And so I think that people seek out the church for self-betterment and then find other pieces in return.
So do you think I feel like you're our men's pastor, so you're going to say yes, but do you think it's beneficial for couples to be in small groups, or for men to be in small groups, or women to be in small groups?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think honestly, and maybe Kenton will hit me for this, but I think it's honestly just as important, if not more important, than being here on Sunday. I think that the church is those meetings, those small groups where we go deeper, we dive deeper, we share life together, we break bread together. Like those kind of things are what was modeled in the early church. And so, I think that those are a clear path of something that is more rich and vibrant than just showing up on Sunday. I think showing up on Sunday is obviously good, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. And that those small groups are where true relationships and accountability and things like that happen.
Yeah. I mean, to present somewhat of the worldly perspective on this, like, a small group getting together, it's one more thing on the calendar.
Sure.
It's like we're already so busy, and what are the chances you're going to like everybody in your small group? Like, there's a
Probably
lot of
not
people
great.
you don't like, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this person's talking again. Like, how do you encourage people to get beyond that point?
Yeah.
Because it is intimidating to join a small
It for
group.
sure is. Yeah. I mean, I think especially now, like we were talking about the distrust and things like that. You're like, well, what if I say something they won't like? What if they say something I don't like? Things like that. And my answer is that's good. It's good that there are people in your small group that maybe you don't always get along with, that think differently than you, that challenge you in different ways. That's the body of Christ. Like if we were all agreeing all the time about everything, there's not much challenge. There's not much, friction there that is good. And so disagreement is good when it's healthy. And so finding a space where small group can be safe, it can allow you to disagree and model what that looks like in a healthy way, can then go out. It can go to your family. It can go to your coworkers, your neighbors. And now that you've modeled what disagreement and being around people that you don't necessarily agree with or that think differently, might rub you the wrong way, might talk too much in small group, if you work through those areas in a safe space like a small group, then you can take them with you into your life outside of it too. And so the benefit is for sure there.
It does feel like the church culture is a little more transient than it used to be, because it's like, for COVID example, like if we're required to wear masks, we're not going to go to that church. We're going to another church.
Sure.
Or this pastor said something that doesn't agree with my political beliefs, so we're going to leave that church. And so it does seem like there's a lot of people that are just very transient, as opposed to just being in the church, pushing through the disagreement, like being rooted. Because if you're looking for a place that someone's not going to offend you, you will never find it.
You won't. No, you won't. And I think that it's really important that I think whenever people are brushed with that situation, I would actually encourage you to dive deeper rather than pulling out, because I think that if you identify something that you disagree with, obviously, like, do your research, understand kind of where you might find those disagreements. And if it's a theological disagreement, then sure, like maybe have those conversations. But at the same time, I think that if you're having those disagreements, and it's something that you can dive deeper in, and maybe you can affect change in the church. Maybe you can learn some new things and be open to changing your own opinion or having a new perspective on something. Or maybe you can just say, hey, this is an agree to disagree, but I still respect you and I love you because of it.
That's that last piece, I think, is what's missing.
Yeah.
Like there's so much good stuff in here, and we're running out of time. But like the average, I'm looking at the average number of weekends the number of weekends the average church attender goes to church. And across all ages, it's 1.6 weekends. And none of them, Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, Boomers, none of them get above that two 2 weekends a month, which I would say is kind of low. Just 2 weekends a month. Gen Z, though, has the highest attendance rate, followed by Millennials, followed by Gen X right now, which is awesome. Like we said, they're kind of leading this charge. So I think I guess my fear is if they're kind of leading this charge at like attending church and in like finding, purpose, meaning, and truth, I feel like it would be detrimental to their spiritual walk if they didn't have these types of mentoring relationships from people who have maybe just walked that road a little longer than you.
Absolutely. And I think that those types of relationships are mutually beneficial. It's not just these older generations, like, we need you to come in and guide these guys. It's you can take something from each other. And I think that older generations can come in and provide some guardrails. You know, here's what life has been like for me. Here's where I've stumbled in my faith, things like that. And I can allow you to bounce off the guardrails. But these younger generations can come and bring a passion that potentially hasn't been seen before. And so there's this resurgence in these younger generations in reading their Bible and praying and coming to church because they're passionate. And they're trying to figure out, where do I want my passion to lie? And if they're finding it in the church, that's awesome. But we have to channel it. And so being able to come in and say, we love that you're passionate. Let's figure out how to harness it and use it in a godly way, in a holy way. And the older generations are the means to make that happen. And so I think that it's very much mutually beneficial, and it can kind of start a fire in those older generations. Say, hey, I haven't seen this in a while. This is really fun. I want to jump on this and be a part of it too.
I do feel like there's like the distrust is the thing I keep coming back to, because I hear like, Christians have a lot of opinions about other Christians.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're so divided on things that like, yeah, like it's an important like theological point, but I'm like, if we agree on Jesus, can we come to the same table and stop talking down on other Christ followers? Because I think that's detrimental to the church.
Absolutely.
So before we wrap up, we've talked about these relationships intergenerationally. We've been talking about relationships and how they benefit men. We've talked about how the younger generations are kind of leading this revival in the church. What's the main thing you want people to hear you say about this data?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that we are seeing that resurgence in these younger generations. And this is an awesome time where the church can almost do an about face and say, let's embrace it. Let's see this passion and channel it and use it for good. And these older generations that have potentially been involved in the church for a while can jump on that and run with it and be in a spot where the church can kind of have a new fire that it hasn't felt in a while. And we've seen revival happen before. We've prayed for revival. And I think that this could be a chance where that happens in the American church. But it's gotta be because these intergenerational relationships happen. And the working together and kind of righting some wrongs that have happened in the past is going to be what really turns the tide. And I think that we have the chance in the next couple of years for that to happen, but it's going to take the intentionality from every generation reaching across and saying, in the past I've felt distrust, but I'm going to chance it. And I'm going to risk it on you because I feel like it's worth it, because I feel like you're worth it. And I think that that's really what's going to change things and see the real benefit in the church moving forward.
And it's also like, be okay if 2 generations behind you or ahead of you, like it looks different. Like,
Absolutely.
Be okay with it not being what you're used to all the time, because just because it's not something you're used to doesn't mean it's something that's bad or that God can't use.
Absolutely. And I think that we've seen, we can learn from the past and see that, this trust has happened, the divide has happened, so let's make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right.
We have these younger generations that are coming up. We can learn from that and say, hey, let's invest in Gen Z now. And be a part of their lives so that they grow up in the church, they feel the trust, they trust the older generations, they want to be drawn into that, and they grow up in a church that loves generations and they love the impact of that, and that they know that that's just a part of their faith, is learning from people older than them and then being ready when the time comes for them to now invest in the next generation after them as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny, as we're talking, I keep getting pinged by some of the girls I used to lead in the youth group. And they're like, I'm home from college, I want to get together. And I'm like, this is exactly what we're talking about. It's important to pour into these other generations.
The depth is there for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we went a little bit over it, but this is all fascinating information. Love your insight. Love the way your brain is wired. And I've been wanting to get you on just to like pick your brain a little bit about some of these things. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us. And I want to thank you guys also for joining us on another episode. If you have any other questions or you want to know any of the data even that we're referencing, you can submit those questions at acfellowship.org/podcast. And it's an anonymous form. So if you want to leave your contact information, we can get things back to you. But thanks again for joining us. Keep the questions coming, and we will see you guys next week.